Folks, I didn't believe it. I've been hearing from various people over the past week, um, scattered reports of Rekieta's friends and acolytes blaming his children for the whole situation that is currently unfolding, blaming the children for Rekieta's downfall. I, of course, heard Kurt of Uncivil Law blaming the pastor. I think he wasn't the only one saying, "Oh, that stupid pastor," and Nick was blaming him and blaming the church, saying, "Oh, these church people, they have it out for me." People saying, "Oh, well, they only, they called the police on Rekieta because, he missed a couple of sermons, and these are, religious zealots, and if you're not there sitting in your assigned seat every Sunday, they go wacky and they want to control you." Well, that was one thing. Now I guess they've moved on from that, and the Rekieta Defense Squad is truly blaming the children. The new narrative is apparently that this 6-year-old who was showing up to Sunday school in 3-day-old clothes, the same clothes that they've been wearing all week, complaining that they'd like a change of clothes, asking the police officer, "Please, could you find me some clean clothes? Could I take a hot shower? Could I have a bath?" This child is to blame. The children should have been taking care of themselves. And because these kids couldn't keep themselves up, because they were unable to keep up appearances, that made Rekieta look bad and exposed him. It made the police start looking into him and find his degenerate drug den. And that all this would have been fine. Rekieta was a high-functioning drug addict, you see. There was nothing wrong with his drug use. The only thing everything would have been fine as long as the kids took care of themselves. But because the kids had to go, yapping about how they didn't have, food or clean clothes, and the little ones hadn't been bathed. That's what spoiled the party for Mr. Rekieta. And that has created a lot of bad days for some of his closest streaming partners, such as Robert Barnes or Joe Neerman of Good Logic, all people who I've watched on various occasions. In fact, Robert Barnes is the one who got me into the LawTube space. I remember watching Robert Barnes on a little channel that had like 4,000 or 5,000 subscribers. The People's Pundit back in 2020. Yes, it was before the election. I remember watching their weekly election updates and what their thoughts were. I thought it was interesting because Barnes was a betting man, and so he was putting money on these things. And Barnes is very good at networking. He's a very good friend to have if you are trying to grow your channel, because he likes to plug his friends. One of which was Nick Rekieta. He would plug the Rekieta Law stream, and eventually, I think it was during the Rittenhouse trial, I started watching Rekieta. I was already familiar with him because of Mr. Barnes, and Barnes would appear on Rekieta's channel from time to time. Of course, Barnes had been involved somewhat with the Rittenhouse case. Then you had all these other guys in the orbit. Joe Neerman, been around a long time. He's the one who thinks that 4- and 5-year-olds should be taking care of themselves. And if the 6-year-old wasn't bathed, well, that's the 6-year-old's problem. That's not Mr. Nick's problem. Doesn't make Nick a bad dad. Doesn't make Kayla, who doesn't even have a job, doesn't make her a bad mom. That she's a stay-at-home mom, and yet her kids are running around unbathed and in the same clothes. I mean, you might hear it in my tone. It's just gross even having to address this, but, and I kind of wanted to wash my hands, literally, of the Rekieta situation this week and, move on to, exciting things happening with, Trump going to prison and all this stuff, very exciting news. I mean, not that I'm happy about that. I mean, exciting in terms of like, wow, that's eventful. But I can't not vent about this stuff, and that's what this channel's all about for me. This channel is about venting my frustration with the internet. And so I felt compelled to add my voice to the chorus of people who do not blame the children in this situation. People who do not blame the children when they have drug-addled, deadbeat, absentee parents. It's one thing to be a drug addict as a parent. If you can somehow conceal that from your children and you never get high around your children, you don't do it at home. Let's say you're someone like Nick Rekieta who's being unfaithful in your marriage, and let's say that dad goes on business trips. Okay, maybe once a month dad will go on a business trip to Las Vegas, and he'll snort a bunch of coke and fornicate with prostitutes. Not that different from what Nick Rekieta is doing in principle, but in terms of degree, in terms of effect on his family, what he's doing is much worse. Because instead of sequestering his degeneracy, keeping it away from his family, being there for his children when it counts, instead, no, he's decided to bring all of that into his home, into the home of his children, so that they don't have a safe place at the end of the day when they come home from school, or I guess, some of them are homeschooled, so they have nowhere to escape to, other than the church maybe, which is why all these reports, in the search warrant, were coming from the church. That was the only outlet that the children had to seek help, because they lived in a crack den. When it gets to that point, obviously the parents are indefensible. I mean, I don't mean legally. Yes, they should have a legal defense, but if you're just commentating about the situation as a human being, and you take all that at face value, that's indefensible. That is not where you're blaming the children. It just really is so gross, and I don't see how the Rekieta defenders come back from this. Like, who's going to take them seriously from this point forward? Because there's quite the gaggle of them now. Although I guess Barnes and Neerman are the most severe. It's just, this is such an obvious cut and dry situation. And no, I'm not talking about legal analysis. Legal analysis is separate from that. But knowing Barnes, how he rips into people, he's not someone who goes kind, who's kind to people. When they're wrong in a situation, he will rip into them and say all sorts of nasty things about them. He's very unafraid of doing that. And yet in the case of the Rekieta situation, not only does it's fine for Barnes to have his legal analysis and say, I think that the warrant is wrong, here, here, and here, or I think that Rekieta could get off by using X legal strategy. That's perfectly normal. That's what you should do as a YouTube lawyer when you're commenting on a case. Yes, but when the case is someone who you know personally, who's a friend of yours, and they clearly have fucked up this bad, Barnes is not someone who would just let that go if he thought that there was something wrong with it. Clearly, Barnes does not think that there's anything wrong with Rekieta's behavior morally, or else he would have expressed that. Barnes shits all over people for having a different opinion than him, let alone abusing their children. Yeah, I don't know what else there is to say about that. It's not that Barnes is secretly, he's disgusted by what Rekieta did, but he's just such a professional lawyer. He's just such a professional commentator. He won't let his emotions get in the way. No. In fact, Barnes is blocking people left and right. Anyone who doesn't simp for Rekieta as hard as he is. All the other YouTube lawyers. Anyone who's just not a part of the Rekieta defense squad. Longtime friends of Mr. Barnes. They're all getting blocked. And so it's very clear how serious Barnes's commitment is to the Rekieta cause. Barnes is going down with the ship. Neerman's going down with the ship. Friggin' Ethan Van Sciver, who or Shiver, whatever the hell his name is, someone who I only know in reference to Eric July. I mean, I think that's pretty pathetic as an online life form. If I only know who you are in reference to another person who you're constantly ass mad about for no perceptible reason. Frankly, I don't understand why people want to be so immersed in the Rekieta stink. Why do you want this so attached to you? Why have they made this such a strong part of their identity? How do you get to the point of blaming the children for their parents' drug addiction and sexual depravity? You know, as a Christian conservative. It's mind-numbing. I guess it's a good example of how, a lot of people on the right who, you might not even know. A lot of people are obvious frauds, but a lot of folks who seem like good, normal people. I would certainly have said that about Joe Neerman. He always seemed like a normal person to me. They just have this, they're just complete frauds. I mean, there's no consistency between, hey, I'm good traditional American, Christian or no, Joe's not Christian, he's Jewish, but feel free to make jokes about that in the comments, I guess, if you want. Barnes certainly isn't Jewish. Now, I don't think Barnes is religious either. Rekieta was, though. So I guess, Rekieta is the most typical Christian conservative, archetype. And, of course, complete fraud. And so Barnes lives in Vegas, so maybe I guess we could assume that Barnes always, thought and would have said, if you asked him, hey, do you think it's okay to be snorting cocaine with your kids downstairs and completely neglecting them and not feeding them, not giving them access to the washing machine because it's in your friggin' crack den. I don't think I've pointed that out yet today. I've pointed it out before. Everyone's pointed it out. The reason the kids are walking around in dirty clothes, the reason why you can't blame the older kids for not doing the laundry, even though it's not the older kids' job to make sure that their younger siblings are cleaned and are bathed and wearing clean clothes. That's not the older sibling's job. It would be, you would think, the stay-at-home mom's job primarily, since she's the one who doesn't work. And Nick Rekieta, let's be honest, doesn't actually work. He stays at home and talks into a camera for a few hours a week. And so they're both a couple of bums. And so it's by no means the responsibility of the teenagers. But even if it was, even if you wanted to say that, okay, well, the teenager should have been doing the laundry. You're going to say the teenager should be carrying dirty laundry, having to step over their tweaked out parents and the other couple that was living in their bedroom? You think they should just walk in there, into that bedroom with God knows what is going on, when for all they know, someone could be, tied into the sex swing or the sex cross or any of their other sexual torture device things. The sex toy drawer could be wide open. And then the teenager's just supposed to go in there and do everyone's laundry, while all that is going on. It's disgusting. It's repugnant. It's indefensible. And that's about the only words that come to mind when I think of Nick Rekieta in 2024. So with that said, I will see you folks back here in the next one.